everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. It's your indie spotlight for February 5th, 2025. Crazy. I can't believe 2025. But anyway, a bit of a smaller independent week this week. Only 3 books to talk about. I will go through at the end and talk about a few other titles that you might want to be on the lookout for at your local comic shop this week. But for our purposes, there's only 3 books that I had a chance to read. Rocky read 2, so we don't necessarily have a top 5, but we will have a pick of the week. Although I suppose your odds are really good. You got a one out of 3 chance of being pick of the week. So we're going to kick it off with a book called Juvenile. We've talked about the first 2 issues of this book previously, so 3rd issue out this week, and let me go ahead and give the credits. Pretty easy. It's by Jesus Oriana. I think I'm saying that right, because, Spanish name, so double L would be a Y sound, so Oriana. Right. He's the writer, he's the artist, he's the letterer, he's the designer, he's also a filmmaker, and I imagine he wants to make this into a film at some point, and that kind of will factor into my review when I get to it. But I'm going to throw it over to you first, Rocky. Give us your thoughts on Juvenile issue 3.
Well, Jose Orellana, his writing is top notch and his art's fantastic. I really love the art. The level of detail here is just it's really eye catching, and I love the cover. I want to give a shout out to the covers. The first issue had a picture of one of the juveniles, Sarah. I believe the second issue had Max, and this issue has a character. I think it's Ella on the cover. Yep. But in any event, it's the colors all the covers all have the same sort of theme. It shows the image, the face of one of the characters, and then sort of like floating various items which can be found around your house, lipstick and what have you, just sort of pills and whatever floating around them. And it's basically it has to do with the storyline, because one of the big things I like is I like to have covers that have some reflection, metaphorical or otherwise, as to the actual content of the comic. I just don't want a pretty picture on the cover. I like when it shows something that's symbolic of what's actually inside the comic, and I really love the cover for that reason. Here we have the 2 main characters of Sarah and Max. They're juveniles. It's set in the future, and these kids think that they have a disease. It's in the future. Everyone's getting. I think that their children, they think their children are dying, and so they need to be treated. And what Sarah and Max ultimately they've discovered is that the pills that they're given that are treating them are actually preventing them from, or actually is what's causing them the problems. And they actually, when they stop taking their pills, Sarah discovered she actually develops these sort of psychedelic, or pardon me, these powers of psychokinesis, being able to move objects, and where this series really works is in the characterizations. It's in the relationship building between the characters, and we've seen this before, but it doesn't. It doesn't always work. Yes, it's in a school. Yes, the relationships between students, but what could be where it in a writer's hands that doesn't know what they're doing, this could be very tropey, very unentertaining, and but in Ariella Orellana here, he does a good job of really getting us to know all these students, and of course, there's the typical bully, and then there's Sarah and Max, and she kind of has a crush on him, and in the lettering, in the word bubbles, whenever they're telepathically communicating with each other, there's you could tell by the word balloon the different colors, so you get you get an appreciation as to what exactly is going on, and just the struggle that they have. Sarah wants to ultimately, at the end, they're discovered that the fact that they have these powers is discovered. They're separated. They're experimented upon, presumably. it ultimately leads to there's a little bit of romance, even which you would expect, and all done very thoughtfully, done with. Done in a way that really makes you feel for these characters, and what's the end game here? Why are they keeping these children's powers down? Are the adults afraid of their children? It's dystopian and disturbing in a way, but yet these students themselves, even the bully, there's something to be loved about these students. I mean, they are ultimately just kids, and there's a tragedy to it, but it's also kind of cool because there's going to be an escape, and Sarah tells them all. She shares with them the secret that she knows, that stop taking the pills, stop taking these drugs, and you'll develop powers like me. And she shows them. She uses her powers in front of them and says, "You can do what I do, but you got to stop taking these pills." And ultimately, at the end, that appears to be what they may all end up doing, and again, the plot thickens. This is a fun read. This should be getting. I hope this is getting at least some attention online. I know with Diamond Publishing and Diamond Distribution going bankrupt and all that nonsense, I fear that this, like so many other great indie titles, maybe won't get the attention that in my view, it deserves. But this is Image, so Image hopefully is finding alternative ways of making sure that comic shops get their comics, because this is one where I think should be getting a lot of attention. The art alone is fantastic, but it's I gotta say, it's not always the case that we when you get a great artist, you don't necessarily get good writing, but I feel we're getting both here for the price of one, and I'm quite impressed with this, and the full package here is just really fantastic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Image went exclusive with Lunar a while ago, so I don't have to worry so much about Diamond. They were allowing Diamond to sub-distribute. So basically, they would allow Diamond to order Image books from Lunar and then ship them that way. Now they're not even doing that. So shouldn't have, so the Diamond thing shouldn't have an effect on anybody getting Image books. So yeah, I mentioned Jesus Oriana being a filmmaker, and I feel like that colors this work. I'm never a big fan when somebody, well, I can't get my film made, I'm just going to turn it into a comic, and prove it's a viable story. Like, make a good comic. And so I know you're enjoying the writing, Rocky. I am not. There are times when it's good. Typically when the characters are interacting, especially Max and Sarah, then the dialogue rings true. He does a good job of capturing the voices of the characters. However, there's a weakness in pacing and plotting in the book. It's a brilliant idea. It's not necessarily the most original. Hey, it's teens with mental powers. We've seen that before, but it's interesting enough, and there's little tweaks here and there. It's in the future. They're given these pills, as you mentioned, to dampen their powers, and there's still a lot of things about society and what have you that we don't know yet. So there's enough there to make it compelling, and I would watch this as a film. But again, it falls down in the pacing, and when Oriana is using dialogue, it really is clear in the final scene that Rocky was talking about, where Sarah tells the rest of the students, which I don't know why Max and Sarah didn't think of doing this sooner. Like, why wait until people have been lobotomized and Max is about to go under the knife and what have you? Now you're finally gonna, like, dude, spill the beans. Like, you get everybody on the same page, and you can take over the joint, and you can all be free, and you can go and free the rest of the kids that are being captured and drugged against their will. It doesn't ring true. Like, but we'll set that aside. Maybe kind of the naivete of youth. But when Sarah is talking to the other kids, and specifically on this last page, it's not character interaction, right? It's not one-on-one. like I was, complimenting the dialogue earlier, especially between Max and Sarah when they're, because it's not just psychokinesis, it's also telepathy. They're able to read each other's thoughts and and communicate non-verbally. That dialogue is fine and it makes sense if Oriana is a filmmaker. That's sort of the bread and butter of dramatic films, anyways. Interpersonal dialogue and talking to people. That's how you get story across. But here, toward the end, when Sarah is sort of giving her speech, if you will, or motivational speech, hey, let's all stop taking the drugs and free ourselves and save Max and blah blah blah. It's more expositional, right? She's not speaking to. It's not one-on-one. She's not speaking to any one person. She's having to move the plot along with what she's saying, and it's so clunky and so cringy, and it's the difference between a comic and a film, right? In film, this is going to be much different. You don't have to say as much because you can show more things. You're going to have music playing to kind of set the mood, different visuals and context.
That's true.
And clues and all sorts of other stuff. But in a comic, all you have is the word balloons, along with the art, and he does an exceptional job with the art. I have no complaints about the art. Reminds me a little bit, I think I've said this before, of Jose Reap, Juan Jose Reap.
Yeah.
So I have no complaints about the art, but the dialogue, and kind of the narrative pacing here, it suffers a little bit. It's a little choppy, but I sort of forgive it. I still would recommend this just because I think it is strong enough in the art and in the overall idea that you can sort of get it, and it does feel like we're going to get a complete story. Because the other thing, like when I finished reading this third issue, and I was thinking about how fast this is going. So 5 issues, it's moving along at a pretty fast pace. Again, maybe a little too fast. Maybe we're glossing over things. The story needs a little bit more time to breathe, but it's Image. That means Jesus is funding this himself. I don't know how well I don't know if sales are. He probably hasn't even gotten any payments on it yet. Typically, for an unknown, it's not until trade sales where you can make any sort of profit or even pay off the project. But again, I think he's doing this as proof of concept for the film or what have you. So, but anyway, as I was thinking about it, I was like, 5 issues. It feels like a little rushed. It's a little clunky, whatever. But what does it remind me of? It reminds me of Morning Glories in a lot of ways, which is another series about kids around the same age, teenagers.
Nick Spencer, right?
Nick Spencer, art by Joe Eisma. And that sort of had the opposite problem. That was so decompressed and had so many. It was like reading an issue of that was sort of like watching an episode of Lost, which I stopped watching Lost, I think, after the second season. I was like, this is ridiculous. I watch an episode, all I want is answers, and I finish watching the episode, I just have even more questions than I did coming in. And that was Morning Glories, right? You'd read an issue, and you'd get very little, if any, answers, and there'd just be more mysteries revealed constantly. It's supposed to be 100 issues, and we only got, I think, like 52 or 54, something like that. And so that was kind of like going the other way, where it was too decompressed and too spread out, and it wasn't paced fast enough. It's like somewhere in the middle of Morning Glory's pacing and Juvenile's pacing is the perfect pacing and the perfect Juvenile's or teen angsty story, teens with powers or what have you. I still love that series. I hope someday that it finishes. At this point, I don't think it will. But not so different from other series like Clone that I wish would finish. So, I do recommend picking this up. It is entertaining, but I gotta admit that maybe it's Jesus Oriana's inexperience. He's not a veteran comic creator by any stretch of the imagination. And the other part of me was wondering. I mentioned he's doing everything himself. This might be a situation where having another co-creator or two might make the sum of the parts greater than the whole. It adds up, and all of a sudden it's more than just, hey, it's great art, it's great narration or whatever. Like it really becomes something. But again, I don't know him. I don't know his process or what have you. I don't know if he's using an editor. There's no editor credited. Maybe somebody like a Will Dennis. or Heather Antos. They do freelance editing. Bringing somebody in like that might have helped out. But again, it is entertaining. It is worth your time, as you can tell for how long I've talked about it. But yeah, there's room for improvement as well. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next book I'm going to talk about. Is Rocketfellers. This is from Ghost Machine, which is one of our favorite publishers these days. This is written by... written by Peter J. Tomasi. He is credited as the writer, along with story. Francis Manipul also helps with story, plot, if you will. He's handling the art. We've got John Kalis and Francis Manipul credited as color artists, and then Rob Lee on letters. So we've seen this character. I don't know if they've been named, but we've seen this character in a few instances previous. They're hunting for the Rocketfellers, and this issue starts off with a character I don't think that we've seen before, that shows up here and is in the future. And then we see this, I guess Raina is her name. What's wrong, Raina, he says. And she's like cybernetic, and he's like, he reminds me of, what's the character in the X-Men? It's not Armor. There's another character in X-Men where he's pink like this, and you can kind of see his eyes and his brain. Glob or something? I can't remember. But anyway,
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. So clearly they're searching for the Rocketfellers. They talk about their atoms coming apart or whatever, and then we switch to the Rocketfellers in modern times, and we see that the father is downstairs and he's messing with this eyeball that very Reed Richards, right? Is the vibe that I get from him, where he's so caught up in the in sort of the fascination of the science and what have you, that you wonder if he's not messing with things that are better left alone, right?
Yeah.
But he's so interested, and he's talking about the dynamics of it and how it seems to be regenerating, and at the end, he's even like, the eye seems to be like focused on me, like pupils dilating or whatever. It's like, dude, it's a standalone eye. Like, why do you even have that thing? But again, he's so fascinated with learning things, and doing research and what have you. You just wonder. So it's a bit of a slice of life issue in a lot of ways, because again, we see Roland in the basement doing his research. We see the son, Rex. He's apparently 3D printing something that he doesn't want the rest of the family to know about. He's playing his music really loud so that they don't hear his 3D printer going. So what's he up to? We see the grandfather, Rodney, who goes out for a jog and has the other senior citizen ladies of the neighborhood all aflutter. We see Rachel, and she's like polar bear diving, I guess you'd say. She dives down in this ice cold water, unprotected. It's freezing water, holds her breath for a really long time. And then we also get Ray, and she's missing her grandmother, and she's sort of playing and doing her little girl things. So again, a little bit of a slice of life type issue, which feels a little bit like setup, but it's also, I know we're only 3 issues in, but if you haven't been reading Rocketfellers, I feel like you could jump on right here. There's been nothing that's happened in the first 2 issues that's been so consequential that you would have to go back and read it. You can sort of read this. It reminds me a little bit of the story that we got in the Ghost Machine special, where we get introduced to all the different members of the Rocketfellers family, and we get an idea of who they all are based on their interests and personality and dialogue and what have you. And it ends up just being a ton of fun. The art from Francis Manipul is fantastic. Color work is great. It's so interesting, right? Because written by Peter J. Tomasi, and again, Tomasi is telling the story along with Francis Manipul. But this has such a different feel than Tomasi's other Ghost Machine title that he's doing that we covered last week, Hornsby and Halo. This is just so wildly different. It's fascinating. But at the end, we get these. I think they're twins or brothers at least. Yuri and Nicholas. They're in London, England. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, those names make me think they're Russian. Yuri and Nicholas. But anyway, they're playing chess. Apparently, they have tons of money. But they noticed that somebody in Washington State is hacking one of their offshore accounts and stealing money from them. You wonder if that's the Rocketfellers. Like, they had to escape to our time, to hide out from people that are after them. Those two, I guess, bad guys, antagonists, whatever you want to call them, villains, that we see in the first couple pages. I'm sure they, jumped back in time here. They didn't have any money or resources using their advanced technology to steal from these guys. So it might be an unintended consequence. They're able to communicate with the future still. So you just wonder, like, if they had to take money initially to get set up and buy a house or whatever, you would think somebody from the future could be like, okay, here's the lottery numbers for this date, and then you can get your own money, and then put the money back, and then you don't get the attention of these guys. But I don't know, maybe that causes time paradoxes and what have you. Can't think about it too much. But regardless, curious to see how that's all going to play out. Really fun series, great jumping on point. Again, I think you could pick this up and sort of hit the ground running without having to go back and read issue 1 or 2 if you were so inclined. So give us your thoughts on it, Rocky.
Well, I'm actually curious in terms of what Peter Tomasi is setting up here plot-wise. I find it interesting, like the artwork at the beginning, where this sort of, like, you could see through this body of this blob-like character all in pink, and you could see his brains and his innards, and at one point at the beginning, his eye, his left eye just sort of like pops and disappears due to instability, and then the next scene in the past, it shows Rodney, or pardon me, it shows Roland Rockefeller, the father, working on what appears to be the eyeball. And I'm wondering if the eye that disappeared ended up popping up in the present. I don't know if that was the case or not, but I thought it was interesting because they're oscillating at quintillion times per second. He's creating a self-replicating nanoborg with its own internal energy. And I'm wondering if I suspect that what Roland is working on might be the very thing that might end up actually helping the villains that are looking for them. And maybe because it seems interesting to me, because I'm sure that we know that the Rockefellers must have did something to piss off the bad guys that are looking for them, who seem to be in desperate. I mean, the bad guys here, you almost feel a little bit sorry for them, even though we know they're killers, or we suspect they're killers, but we know that what's happening to them does look quite terrifying and horrifying. And I like to think that the Rockefellers, if they knew what was happening to them, then maybe they try to help them, but maybe not. I really like Rachel Rockefeller, the redheaded daughter there, the older one. Why she wants to dive in ice cold water to hold her breath for 9 minutes and pat herself on the back, I don't know, but all the power to her. But I thought it's interesting, because they all have their little quirks about them. Potential romance set up with this Tony Martinez character who was ice fishing, and boy, did he get a nice catch. Out pops Rachel Rockefeller. Rachel is also, she flies a helicopter for a local news station, and she ends up dealing with another sort of male guy who wants to take advantage of her, or try to flirt with her a little bit too aggressively, and she uses her skill with the helicopter to teach him a lesson. I thought it was comical, it was kind of funny, and there's a great scene with the old Grandpa Rodney Rockefeller. He's jogging, and the old ladies, there's a couple old ladies that are attracted to him with binoculars in a vehicle, checking out how hot Rodney Grandpa Rockefeller is. And anyways, I think it was very well done. Just it's amazing to me how these Rockefellers, they're from the future, and yet they seem to fit into present day 21st century better than, dare I say, most of us fit in our street. I mean, they really, Peter Tomasi's done a really good job here. Really crafting this story with Francis Manipul's art's just absolutely fantastic. From rendering the villains to the level of detail to the detail in the backgrounds and in the Rockefeller home, and in giving each member of the Rockefeller family their own unique look, their own unique habits, and Tomasi their own unique voices. It's very well done. And I'm really interested to see where this is going to go. Everyone always talks about the Fantastic Four. I was never into the Fantastic Four, even though the trailer dropped. The trailer looks pretty cool, but I was never into the Fantastic Four comic. Because I've never considered the Fantastic Four the first family. They've never seemed like a family to me. They just don't. This feels like a family to me, the Rockefellers. It just seems more genuine and heartfelt and frankly better written.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, the Fantastic Four, they've had a lot of different iterations over the years, so I'm not going to say that this is better written than every iteration of Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting that you brought up the trailer. So I did watch the trailer. I saw the trailer was getting a lot of love online or whatever.
I love the '60s. I love the '60s aesthetic.
Yeah, I didn't like it. Not even a little bit. No, I was like, wow, this is so cringy and awkward. But yeah, that's just me.
And no Robert Downey Jr. in it. No Doom.
Yeah, I feel like Marvel Zombies is definitely a term you can apply to MCU fans. But I wasn't a fan of the casting when they announced the casting, and my fears were kind of borne out. I think Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic is a horrible casting. But yeah, it felt awkward. Casting didn't feel right. But I hope it does really well, and I hope everybody that goes and sees it enjoys it. But I won't be going to see it. It's not something I'm in. Anyway, I did want to shout out real fast that his name is Glob Herman. I was right. That's what he looks like. Not exactly the same. He's got translucent skin, but not exactly the same. But close.
So Glob Herman is an X-Man then?
Yeah, he's an X-Man. Okay. And with a body like that, it's kind of globby. He's really strong, and he's obviously impervious to harm, partly because he doesn't really have a solid body, so to speak. All right, last book that we're going to talk about. Now, Rocky has read this in the past, but he's not caught up on it, and I wasn't caught up either. But I did take the weekend to get caught up. Actually, didn't finish until today. Because I went all the way back to issue number 1 and read them all. And so it's Grimm. It's from writer Stephanie Phillips, who we're big fans of. Illustrated by Flaviano, colors by Rico Renzi, letters by Tom Napolitano. And it's so funny the way that this issue 21 starts out. Because I just recently reread issue 1, I don't know if I would have remembered that this is exactly the same. So Flaviano probably got to reuse some illustrations that he already had done before and got paid for not having to do the work over again, because this is exactly the way the first issue starts out. So the whole idea of Grimm, it's actually short for Grim Reaper, and our main character is a Grim Reaper, and throughout the story, what we find is that we find out that she's actually the daughter of the Grim Reaper, the sort of the one and only, if you will. We find out there's a ton of Reapers, and he is Death, if you will. That's who her father is, and he had a sort of a forbidden liaison, I guess you'd say, with the main character. Jessica is her name, Jessica Haro. So Death had intimate relations, and so Jessica is half human and half cosmic entity, I guess you would say. And there's a little bit of a feeling of Lore Olympus, one of the most successful webtoon series of all time by Rachel Smythe. And, the whole idea of the interpersonal relationship soap opera sort of stuff. So that's what we have here. Death's sister, Adina, she is very ambitious and sort of aspires to the throne and thinks she would do a better job running the afterlife than her brother. And so she makes a deal, and when the story first starts out, Death is exiled to a hotel room in Las Vegas, and Adina is sort of running things, and then Jessica's a Reaper. But what's interesting is she's one of the only Reapers, as far as anyone knows, who doesn't remember her own death, because the rest of the Reapers are people that have died and were recruited to become Reapers. And we also learn in the first issue that Jessica's able to interact with the living, as opposed to everybody else who's just sort of a ghost. So she seems to have these powers and abilities that are a little bit beyond what everybody else has. And we find out, again, through the course of the series, is because she's, half human. And again, with the whole idea of betrayals and what have you, there's another Reaper that, for reasons that aren't entirely clear, decides that she's going to betray Jessica when Jessica has a chance to escape and get out from under her aunt's thumb. And she betrays Jessica and Jessica's two friends in exchange for freeing a soul. And what Adina finds out, to her dismay, is that the soul that this woman Annabelle wants is sort of the essence of sin. It's this, what they call the seed of original sin. She just thought, she wants to bring a loved one back to life, or a boyfriend or something like that. That doesn't turn out to be the case. So we're not sure why Annabelle does this, but she becomes infected by that seed, and now she's got this army of the people that are infected from original sin, and they're trying to destroy the Reapers, that are trying to destroy the Sisters of Fate. And they have merged all the different realms together, like afterlife, life, everything is on Earth, everything's interacting with each other, and nobody can die because Death himself has been destroyed. And so people are in tremendous pain, these horrible, grievous, mortal injuries that normally would kill you. You get in a car accident, your guts are hanging out, and you're in terrible pain, but you can't die because Death himself has been destroyed. So really interesting to see what's going to happen next. Jessica's trying to recruit her own army to fight against the army of sin. And we find out, in the previous issue, we see a flashback of Death trying to court Jessica's mother, Lila Harrow. And Lila sort of says, hey, I thought we were just casual. I mean, Death shows up on her doorstep with a bouquet of flowers, and she has another guy there that she's about to get busy with or whatever. Death is all upset and throws his flowers down. He's like, I can't believe I love you, and it's this forbidden thing, and I shouldn't be doing it, and you don't even care. And she's like, I thought we were casual. So he gets all emo, and he and she's like, I just need time to, sort of figure out. So Death takes that literally, and he goes and captures time. Time is another sort of cosmic being. He goes and captures time and puts it in a locket and gives it to Lila. And so this is Time here, this blonde girl. And Jessica is given the locket, and her mother breaks it open and says, only your father would take this so literally. I said I needed time. He literally brought me time. And so Time is, in this issue, that's why we start off flashing all the way back to the first issue, because Time is sending Jessica through various iterations of what her life would have been had she had more of a normal life or whatever. And in this page here, it's really interesting because Jessica's like, I get it. I get that you're mad. My dad's not here anymore. He's been destroyed. And you're hating me by proxy, but I didn't have anything to do with trapping you in that locket, and sorry or whatever. And she's like, well, that's not why I hate you. It helps, sure, but the reason I hate you is because in every world, in every possible timeline, there's one thing that's constant, and it's just brilliant work here from Flaviano. You know, they're in the afterlife, and they're talking, and everything looks esoteric, and then they start flashing through those different timelines. And you have like this futuristic where they're standing on a balcony, and then we have this other one where everything's vegetative and all these trees and vegetations and what have you, and then flash back to like 1800s where they're wearing these gowns and there's snow outside and all these cats, feels very Victorian. And then
Gorgeous art.
Yeah, another one they're in space here with these spacesuits, like they're on Mars or whatever. And then we get to the last page, and she says, yeah, the reason, no matter what timeline, no matter what possible alternate reality, we fall in love. And apparently Time is not a big fan of falling in love with Jessica Haro. We don't know why. So it's such a fun series because it's these, especially Jessica as a character, she's so likable, but she's also so flawed, which makes her, really relatable. She doesn't know who she is. She's searching for her identity. She discovers throughout the first arc of the series that she's half human, half death being, or whatever you want to call it. She's like, so what powers do I have? What abilities do I have? Where's my place in the world? Why did my father do this? Why did my mother tell me? Like, she has all these questions about who she is and where she fits and all that. And there's other characters that go along as well. Some of the Reapers, her friends, Eddie and Marcel, that struggle with their own issues that they brought to the afterlife. Just kind of the regular human drama of it all. So this whole idea of framing this human drama in this supernatural setting with just fantastic art. We're 20 issues in, and you would think that we would have had, some sort of resolution or what have you, but we're still sort of telling the same story. Like, the whole story is just kind of a slow burn of Jessica's identity. We did have one issue that was kind of I think they called it an interlude or interstitial, that focused on Marcel. We had another one that focused on Eddie and how they died. Give us a little more context into them. But this is so good. It's one of those books where it's such a perfect melding of the story that's being told, the artwork by Flaviano, and the colors. This book would not be the same. Like, you couldn't take away any of those aspects. You couldn't take out Flaviano and insert another artist. The book would be completely different. Without Rico Renzi's colors and the way he renders things color-wise, whether it be the scythes or the different supernatural spells or the afterlife itself, this book would not be the same if it wasn't for that. And then obviously Stephanie Phillips is sort of the driving force as the writer. And the other thing that she does that is so brilliant, and you can see it on the opening page, I don't know how well you can see it in the YouTube or whatever, but at various moments in the story, instead of dialogue, we get song lyrics. And again, the first issue, having just reread it over the weekend, it starts off on this opening page, which again looks very much like the opening page from issue 1, and we're getting the lyrics from Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper. All our times have come. It's just brilliant because it sets the mood, right? Like we talked before, we were talking about Juvenile, how you don't get to put the music in there, but in a way she does, right? Because if you're a child of the 80s, because a lot of these songs are from the 80s, you're going to know these lyrics, right? You're going to read them, and then you start singing the song in your head. Everything from Blue Oyster Cult to Belinda Carlisle to The Cure, it's brilliantly done. And I don't think, again, I hadn't been caught up, so we haven't been covering it. So when I saw it was coming out and it was a bit of a lighter week, I was like, oh, I'll have time to get caught up on it and talk about it, and hopefully it's as good. Because I think, man, I hadn't read since I think I read issue 5. I'm still buying them all because I want to support Stephanie's work, and I know it's really good. But it's one of those things where I have a harder time when I buy physical copies reading it than digital, because it goes in a pile, and then where is it, and I gotta track it down, and where's the next issue, and that sort of thing. I basically went into the Boom press thing where they have all the issues, and I Yeah, I read them all this weekend, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I'm gonna definitely stay caught up on it now because I'm so sucked in. I'm so invested. So yeah, again, just brilliantly done. I thought it was fantastic. Um, so yeah, Rocky, you're gonna have to make some time to get caught up, man. It's really good.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe 6 or 7 issues behind, so I should be able to do it in about hopefully an hour and 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, they're not super long reads. They're probably about 10 or
Yeah,
yeah, probably about 10 minutes each.
yeah.
All right.
Uh,
Well, that being said, this is my book of the week. Again, I'm glad that I got caught up on it. The other thing I got caught up on last weekend was World Tree. Highly recommend that book too. But Grimm, yeah, it's fantastic. I really recommend it. It's so relatable, I think, especially for teens that are searching for their identity, young adults. Man, you really can understand what Jessica's going through. You know, not literally because you're not Reapers, but yeah, the struggle for identity, the self doubt. Again, it's just interpersonal relationships. It's just so good, and the art just makes it sing from Flaviano. So, all right, what's your choice for book of the week?
I It was tough for me. I really like Juvenile. It's just hitting the right notes for me. Um, I will. I mean, I'm mindful of your comments about the pacing and some of the story elements of Juvenile. Um, but I'll go with Rocketfellers only because there's more. It seems to be the family element, the eclectic array of personalities of the different family members of Rockefellers, and the teasing of the villains, they're visually captivating. The art of Francis Manapul, it's just absolutely it's just so compelling, hinting at a larger plot that we're not really sure what the larger plot is. But it combines the innocence of family with the hints of greater horrors to come. And I'm really starting to love the Rockefellers, and they've already lost their grandmother in opening issues, and you could tell the family still thinks of her. I find it interesting that even one of the characters, Rachel, is diving into holding her breath underwater in ice cold waters, and that's similar to how her grandmother died. And then even a younger Rockefeller was, playing with her action figures and, pretending to save their grandma. So you can tell it's something that's had an impact on the family that I didn't mention before. But in any event, it would have to be Rockefellers. Peter Tomasi, great job, and Francis Manapul on the art. Good stuff.
Yeah, similar to Grimm, this book is just not the same with somebody else doing the art,
Yeah.
right? Like I mentioned, how different Hornsby and Halo feels than this book, and yeah, that's all due to the art. It just feels so different. So anyway, some other books you might want to be on the lookout for if you're heading out to the comic shop today. Gunslinger Spawn up to issue number 40. Walking Dead Deluxe, which is basically just The Walking Dead but colored, is up to issue 106. We've got The Sacrificers number 14 from writer Rick Remender. Sonic the Hedgehog. Not something I normally would mention, but man, that book actually sells really, really well. And putting together a run of Sonic the Hedgehog is as expensive as putting together a run of Spawn, even though there's only 76 issues. Like, it's insane. Some of those books, they had kind of a low print run, and they just a regular issue will go for like 60, $70. Like, not even a key issue. It's crazy. Anyway, Snot Girl is also out, issue number 18. Can't believe there's a book called Snot Girl that has 18 issues. Also, Kaya from Wes Craig is out, and then Exorcism at 1600 Pen is up to issue number 3. And then finally, Frankenstein New World, The Sea of Forever, which is set in the world of Hellboy. The Frankenstein New World was a 4-issue mini that was really well received. It's set in the far future in that Hellboy universe, and they're coming back to that character. And the reason I mention it's from Dark Horse. The reason I mention it is because I should be having an interview with the writers of that series later this week. So look for that on the YouTube channel and the podcast feed coming up pretty soon. So
Yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget to head over to Rocky's YouTube channel if you want to check out our DC Spotlight for this week. Comic Space Boom ! Is where you can find that. Once you're there, like, comment, subscribe. Obviously, like, comment, subscribe on this excuse me, this video as well. Let us know what indie books you're digging. If you're loving Rocketfellers or Grimm, or if there's another book that's coming out this week that you really enjoyed, let us know. Don't forget, you can find all previous episodes of the Comic Source on our audio feed as well, if that's your preference. Listen in the car, on the subway, or what have you. Somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 episodes. I've lost count at this point. But just go to your favorite podcasting platform or app, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. You can have access to all of that back matter. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Appreciate you joining as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.